I'm here with Mr. Florian Amlinger. He's an Austrian agronomist and soil scientist. He's developed and devoted his whole life on soil management and the preservation of nature, and is currently teaching individuals and companies as well as governments, educating us into how to produce the best quality soil to produce the best quality crops, as well as manage our waste in order to become net zero with the European Commission's directive. Mr. Florian here has dedicated his life in the preservation of nature, has influenced policy of the Viennese government, has written the policy for waste management in the government of Greece, has written policy for the European Commission, and for the past 3 days I've had the pleasure of being taken around the whole of Austria to see how Austria is producing the best compost and is managing its waste. I will then go on to ask you about why we should care about soil, what is soil, the balance of soil between crops and the atmosphere, and finally the future of agriculture and the generations to come.
Thank you very much, Aris. I started just by chance in the University for Life Science with my studies in agriculture, and when I was finished at that time in 1986, when organic farming became something that was accepted by the scientific community as something worth to take care on, as a future and alternative management of our environment and food production, I was searching for an institute to work in organic farming. I found one in Vienna and worked there for 10 years. And from the first day on, there was a project in 1986 for a separate collection of bio-waste and composting. And this is the time where I started to be involved in the question of humus and compost production.
You've mentioned separate collection of bio-waste, which will become a directive in the European Union by the 31st of December 2023. So from the 1st of January 2024, all member states have to separately collect their bio-waste. I'm sure many people don't know what this means and how soon it's coming. So could you please tell us a bit more about what waste management is and how it will benefit us for the future of the environment?
Yeah. So during the last 20 or 30 years, it was recognized that all we throw away as a society is a value, is worth to be considered as a resource and not rather as a waste to be wasted. And therefore, and at the same time in the 1970s, 1980s, the landfill and disposal sites were limited. A new one would have needed to be built, and in the more densely populated areas in Europe, this became very, very expensive. And therefore, in the 70s and 80s, the recycling industry started, more or less. So we have seen only if those resources we have in the waste, if they are collected separately at the source of their involvement, of their origin, only then the purity and the quality of the recyclables achieve a level that they can effectively introduced into a production process for secondary products, as a secondary raw material. And above all, this is the case for all the organics, means food waste, garden and park waste, and the residues, which is just following the natural cycle as we do it, or our grandmothers and fathers have done in their gardens, that every organic piece of organic residues from the kitchen and from the garden was recycled via composting or mulching in the garden to preserve the humus content and the fertility for the food production for their families. And this has been forgotten in our, very urbanized and industrialized societies. And this is now brought back to our consciousness and with modern technologies. And that means separate collection schemes are very smartly and introduced into the waste collection schemes. And it is a precondition to produce high quantities and the needed quality to produce the compost from recycled, separately collected organic residues from the kitchens and from the gardens, and to use the compost in farming and for substrates, etc. Mm-hmm. And this is today, it's more or less state of the art, but many countries didn't know because they were afraid of the costs that were put on top. But economic calculations show in overall waste management, the entire waste management costs would not increase if you introduce separate collection, because you reduce the residual waste that cannot be recycled, and the disposal, incineration or disposal and pre-treatment, etc. of residual mixed waste is the most expensive route you can go. And the less you have residual waste, the cheaper the scheme. Yeah.
You've mentioned that we've forgotten what our previous ancestors were doing with composting their consumption, or more precisely their waste, and that in our newly industrialized and urbanized societies that we have forgotten this. We are living in qualitatively different societies than with our grandparents. And in the past 3 days, we've visited many different types of composting plants, from family-owned rural to privately owned industrial to publicly owned mega-industrial. And each serve their purpose in their own community. Yes. The gigantic one serves in the whole city of Vienna, the entire city of Vienna. The privately owned industrial one serves the entire region. Whereas in more rural areas, it's families who deal with their own local waste. Communities. Let's begin from there. How do we distinguish between the mega-industrial for the city from the rural one? And my question is because I'm concerned about the safety that comes with industrializing this process. Because if one mistake goes wrong, it's not one family that will be affected, but the entire city. So what's the importance of having safe and industrial waste management? And how do we control this to be safe for the entire population?
This is a natural cycle of the organic debris and residues from the crops growing during the season, and then you have the leaf fall in the autumn, and then this is transformed by the microbial community and by the soil edaphone into humus, finished. So, and this we have observed for thousands of years, and we know how it works. We follow that route, but we have to do it, of course, in our urbanized and densely populated areas in a way that it doesn't interfere with convenience issues. That means that we don't produce odors, that we don't produce, spreading of maybe animal and human diseases, because that we don't produce foul and producible processes that cause nuisance, etc. And therefore, the most important issue is for the big city as well as for the rural areas to implement an intelligent and smart collection scheme in terms of frequency and in terms of providing the best possible receptacles, buckets, collection helps with degradable, biodegradable or compostable bags by paper or produced from starch, for instance. They're all certified nowadays that they can be composted easily, and they help the population to manage the bio-waste separately in their households and to deliver it nearby the house, so directly it is collected from door to door. So this is the same, I would say, for the city and for the rural area. In the rural area in Austria, we have the very special development established since the 90s already, and this is the cooperation between farmers that provide not only the on-farm agricultural composting facilities for the source-separated organic waste from the citizens and from restaurants and from public parks, they also provide the service of collection. And in this small, local, regional cycle that is traceable, that is easy understood by the population, you achieve a high level of commitment that everybody is part to contribute, to enhance, to improve soil quality food quality, life quality by enhancing the humus content in the soil, contributing to mitigation of greenhouse gases by sequestering CO2 into the soil, increasing the soil fertility, etc. Receiving some compost back from the composting plants for their gardens, for their potting soils, for their vegetables. So this is the logic that has been educated during the last 30 years. And this system works perfectly. And there's one big issue, and this is about the impurities, that people just don't care properly and put some plastic and packaging into the bio bin, so into the kitchen waste that has been collected, and this causes, of course, problems. And this is a matter of education. Maybe it takes another generation until this is internalized in a way by educating the pupils in the schools, and that they grow with that as something we mentioned. It was a natural way of behavior with our grandfathers and in 2 generations before. So the following next 2 generations, this will be just the way how to live, because resources are limited, and every particle of humus for creating resilient and self-sustaining fertile soils must be understood by everybody, that we are part of the game of a good livelihood.
I think it's easier to understand if you are from a rural area where you have direct contact with the farmer, with the farming process and so on. In urban places like Vienna, like Athens, Nicosia, how will a citizen's life change from 1st of January 2024, and why is it important for it to change on the 1st of January 2024?
It was important already 30 years or 40 years ago. But there are certain living customs that have been introduced in our urbanized industrial. First of all, we have not then a regulation, so you have to follow the rules. That's very easy. We have been fighting for that 20 years, that we get such a legal commitment also. And it is important for mainly for 2 reasons. First is, if you get rid of the organics from the residual waste, even the residual waste, you can bring it to a MRF, to a material recycling facility. And this material recycling facility, if there is no organics, no wet material included, you, by the mechanical and automated separation schemes, you can sort out recyclables in a much easier, much more effective and economically viable way. And then you gain even more recyclables for the recycling industry and a secondary raw material. As long as it is full with 20, 30, 40, 50% of organics, impossible, very expensive, very low quality recycled materials, be it metals, plastics, whatever. So from this very pragmatic point of view, you have to, first exercise is to get rid of the organics from the residual waste. Then if you integrate it in a separate collection of packaging, the purer your recyclables are, the higher the price on the recycling market. So it's also an economic argument for the municipalities. The more they earn with the recyclables on the recycling market, they can give it back to the population and to the municipalities and lower the costs for waste management. So you will feel it in your pocket. But most important is, and this is of course a matter of understanding and a matter of education, is to understand the organic cycle, that we need more, I would say even more than our hunger for energy. Because humus production, composting is humus production. It is building up soil fertility in helping the plant soil biota symbiosis to be a self-sustaining regenerative process, ongoing year by year. And you need a certain level of humus in the soil, at least 3 to 4%. If you don't have that, your soil is at risk to degrade at a level that you can't keep up a proper productivity for food production. So it is necessary for keeping up our livelihood. And humus in climate change times we live in, with lack of water, lack of rainfall, provides the soil with the capacity to retain more water even in drought periods. On the other hand, to take up more water in times of heavy rainfalls, it can absorb more water. The water with the soil is not eroded because of the very specific capability of humus complexes in the soil. So you need less power with your tractor for plowing. You need less water for irrigation. So it is an overall economic and ecologic benefit because the resilience and the resistance dynamics of plants against pests increases with a better functioning organic soil in a better symbiosis between plant and soil microbiome. So there are many, many side effects that the humus recycling bring to the benefit of our, food safety.
By 2050, we will have to, due to population increases, double the production of food with half the amount of land that we have today, which is a very scary concept to grasp. Direction that we're going to by mandating by law that on the 1st of January 2024 there has to be a separate collection of bio-waste. We can produce much more fertile land that we have today that can supply double the amount with half the land for the population of 2050 onwards.
Conventional farming, if you go in America to the cereal belt there in the middle west and so forth, the harvest, so the yield, they have there is maximum a third what we harvest here in Europe with the more fertile soils, because they have degraded their soils as much as they can. And there are a lot of scientific evidence is available today that organic farming that is done in a comprehensive and holistic way provides enough food for the population even in 2050, more efficient, with less consumption of energy, by the same time contributing to our climate change program by sequestering carbon in the soil. What is also important, more cost effective. So the costs per kilogram of food produced are less.
The moral of the story is that in 1 year's time, when the directive will be mandated by law, it's very important for everyone to separate their waste so we can have both localized and industrialized compost production for the betterment of the environment, finer quality of food, and at the same time economically competitive modes of production.
Yes, definitely. This is a wonderful summary of this. But first of all, we need an education of the municipalities, of the mayors, of the responsible people in the local authorities, etc., together. And what I'm very enthusiastic about, to implement as much as possible cooperation with agriculture and farming systems, because it also creates additional income for the farmers, and therefore it stabilizes the farming, the so urgently needed good farming families, family farming in the countryside, if they have this additional task for the community. And soil is a commons. This is another issue. Humus is a commons because it nourishes our society and our future generations, and our communities. So our society as a whole is responsible to keep soil as a basis of life, humus as the basis of life, to take care about that in a proper way. And we are all part of this chain, of this life chain.
Thank you very much for this interview. Thank you very much for the past 3 days, for taking me around all of Austria. Seeing the different farms, again, from family to private industrial to public industrial, and their different uses and their importance for the local and wider community. It has been a very enlightening trip, and I hope we can cooperate again in the future.
Thank you very much. It was very kind of you, and I enjoyed very much to have you and the colleagues from Catalonia in this tour and have this lively exchange. So good luck to you also.
Thank you very much.
You.
We are unstoppable, another world is possible. We